This meeting is now being recorded.
And then click the X, and then we'll stop recording at the end. Hi all, welcome to the eCaST users group. We're going to go ahead and get started. With what?
Nick is up first with his program.
It looks like I'm number 2 on there. Essentially what we're talking about today, folks, is along with the training video regimen, in order to get access to eCaST, we've added just a little data entry test at the end of the training, just to give us a little reassurance that you've gotten some of the main principles from the training regimen. And I'm just going to show you what that looks like and where it lives. So this is going to be your test at the end of the training video regimen. After you watch all of the required eCaST general trainings and then all of the required WWC eCaST training videos, this is embedded in those documents as far as where the videos are housed, and I'll show you that in just a second. And what we're going to have you do is enter the training environment of eCaST, which is this link right here. It's an exact copy of eCaST. But it's all de-identified. There's no PHI involved in this section. And what we're going to have you do is log in with the username trainee, the password testing, and then we're going to have you use a couple of forms that should be pretty familiar to you just to do some test data entry. And again, just to remind you, this is for brand new users, folks that are requesting eCaST access for WWC for the first time. This would be kind of the capstone of your training as far as viewing all the videos and then taking this test. So what we would have you do is follow these simple steps as far as entering data into the training environment once you log in. And we use the forms that are, let me get down to those pages, they should be pretty familiar for you. There's a client profile tool. We ask that you use your own name when you are entering data. That's how we're going to track your homework after you take this test to make sure that you are all good to go in eCaST. So we have a client profile tool that will allow you to do the enrollment and profile information. And then further along, we have some clinical cycle data entry to put in for both a breast and cervical screening. The breast screening comes back as normal, so it ends actually in the screening part as far as this test is concerned. The cervical section goes on to a diagnostic setting because we have abnormal settings in the screening here, which is this third page, which is your cervical diagnostic data entry. So what we're going to do is ask new folks to take these forms and enter them into the training environment of eCaST. And once they've done so, they need to shoot me an email, and I will then go in and check their work to make sure that they've done data entry properly. At that point, if we see any lessons that need to be relayed after that, or just tips that folks may need, or just general guidance or help after viewing the results, I'll send that to the individual user in email. We may do a little session one-on-one to make sure that they are fully grasping how to use eCaST. And then from there, we'll grant access and put them in the live production zone and let them get busy in eCaST proper. Do we have any questions in general about just the test at the end of the training regimen? If you do have a question, if you could *6 unmute yourself if you're muted. If you do have any other questions about this, you can always email me at nicholas.roth@state.co.us. Essentially, we just wanted a way to make sure that those videos are hitting home with folks, especially we have a wide variety of users in eCaST, and we just wanted to make sure that you're getting the general flow and use of it, and that you can demonstrate just the basics of data entry after viewing all those videos. So this is where the document is. It's housed both on the YouTube site as well as on our homepage. So if you go to the YouTube site, this is where our link will take you. It's currently embedded in the last training video of the required WWC training, which would be this list here. And there's got to be a smarter way that we can share this with you on the general page. We just haven't figured it out yet. We'll also send you the link whenever you request new training or access, so you'll get the full regimen of stuff. But if you go into the last training, it sits down here in the comment section that you can then click on this document, which is your test. My audio is talking to myself.
Yikes. Oh, so it's down in the comments section.
Yep, it's in the comments section of the last training video. It'll also be in the email that you get in response when you let me know that you have a new individual that needs to be trained when we set them up with a full video regimen. So there is a link to it on the YouTube site. There's also a way to get there from our homepage. So if you navigate to the CDPHE page, you can search eCaST in this section, and it'll get you to the eCaST system page. From here, for specific WWC training, it's going to be in this required training section. And this will take you to a link to all of our training videos. And within this is also the test as well. We have it sitting here. So after you watch all the videos, you would open up the test, do the data entry into the training environment, and then send me an email to let me know that you have completed the training regimen. We'll check your work from there and then grant you access after we address any needs that need to be met. So that's essentially it on the new end of the training piece. We'd always intended to do this and finally came up with a pretty, I think, relatively slick way of just making sure that you're getting the basic principles of data entry, that you can follow the eCaST flow, and that you can use the various parts on the home page as far as navigating throughout the system. So does anybody have any questions about the new training regimen test at the end of the video section?
I have a question, but it's not about the test. I just wanted to see where we can find the forms online.
The data entry form, or sorry, the forms for
WWC forms, yeah, to fill out.
Provider resources page level. Go back
Do you want to navigate?
to
yeah, click on the top link.
WWC
Go to
provider resources.
Here we go.
Scroll to enrollment. Well, there it is right there.
So this is Kristen. What I do is I go to the CDPHE site and I search WWC, and I look for a WWC provider to get to this, and then they're pretty immediately on.
Oh, you know what I do is I bookmark this page.
Oh yeah, Chris is smarter than me. I haven't bookmarked it.
That's a very good idea.
So you can do the efficient or the lazy way. Either really works.
Both work. Wow, yeah.
But yeah, you just click on these links down here, the ones under enrollment, to download them.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, here they are. Yeah, are there any other questions?
The new training test regimen is effective as of today. So if you have an onboarding staff member, this will be in effect for their training in order to get access to eCaST. If you have any questions about it whatsoever, send me an email. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. So I believe, I'm switching topics now. This is Kristen. One thing I believe was discussed during the HIT call, the last HIT call, was that the next round of grant fund change letters, where we will kind of look at and maybe shift around each agency's funding available for WWC based on your need and your progress so far this year. That will be based on the January 15 bill run. Yeah. And I believe that was moved up a month. Originally, we may have communicated mid-February, and we moved it back to mid-January. And so I wanted to remind you guys, as the data entry people, how important completing the data entry is to the accuracy of the way we shift that money around in January statewide. So if you have any maybe old data that you haven't gotten to for whatever reason, I wanted to put out a reminder to you guys in particular that January 15 is a very important bill run date, and just to make sure that you're doing, that all your data entry is up to date as of that January 15, so that we know we're reallocating money in the most accurate way possible statewide according to your need. So I don't know if you guys have any questions. It seems like you guys are doing completing timely data entry. Chris, I don't know if you have any comments, because you were, I know, just looking at that.
Seems like it. Yeah, no, I think, that's always a good
Feels
message.
like
it feels like it. So, but if you do happen to have anything, is it the 15th?
I don't, we do it the 15th or the first business day thereafter if it's on a weekend, and I'm not certain.
Yep, that would be the 15th.
Okay.
And that's a Thursday. Yeah.
So just keep that date in the back of your mind and continue doing data entry, but if you've got some you haven't gotten to in a little while, make sure it's in there before January 15th, and get in touch with Nick if one of those reasons for that is you've been maybe having some data entry difficulties recently or have questions. So just kind of a mid-year check to make sure all your data is in the system. So really what we wanted to focus today on beyond those two announcements was getting your feedback on eCaST functionality, also kind of getting your feedback on the way that training and technical assistance is being delivered by our program, and then what other kinds of training needs you might be interested in, either within the eCaST users group forums, so different topics or things you'd like to maybe have us cover in depth, or other kinds of training opportunities or resources you would like us to provide. So hopefully you've kind of come thinking about what your needs and wants are from us, and we'll just kind of go through those three things I've just described, and then kind of answer any other questions or demo anything that you might have questions about with our remaining time. So first I wanted to ask, we feel like we've gotten through, it seems like questions about how to use the new eCaST data system have slowed down substantially. It seems like people are using the eCaST YouTube site or the videos pretty frequently, but we wanted to kind of get your feedback on how that was going, how eCaST data entry in general was going, and any kind of suggestions or things you want us to be thinking about, what that might be or look like. So does anybody want to chime in, please?
Hi, this is Jessica from Denver Health.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi. The only thing I think we kind of run into is with breast and cervical education. If we could have that, also like a drop-down like CBE, pelvic, you know, like another service provided, that would help us out.
So if it looks more like a procedure than a checkbox?
Yes, because when we go in and look, it's just, you just have that upper portion, and you know, it's just like a little check mark versus it would be easier for us to kind of see the date, because sometimes the dates get lost because it's not a procedure type. So
it's difficult because it's kind of functioning on this other date, the office visit date, which is kind of sit somewhere different in the system, and that's kind of weird for you to see that date feels really disassociated from when the education happened.
Yes.
Okay.
Just because sometimes just how our organization is, like, we can have education given like 2 months before, so then we have to go in and look to see if it was done again, or it's just that date just really seems to give us a hard time sometimes.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, does anybody else have any thoughts or feelings on that? Does that sound helpful to others, or is that maybe specific to the way Denver Health does data entry? We wouldn't want to make one change that was only beneficial to one agency, so I want to make sure others aren't like, oh no, that would not be cool. Okay, I'm not hearing that. So we'll talk about that internally. I think that's a really good suggestion. That's the exact kind of feedback we're interested in learning about today. So thank you, Jessica, and others feel free to chime in with kind of your wants, interests, or needs, or things that we can make better about the system. I can't promise that they'll all be there tomorrow, but we are interested and invested in making this work for you. So please keep ideas coming.
I know one thing that I've gotten in the tech assistance email feedback in working with you all is that you don't always need to watch a 6-minute video to figure out a very acute scenario that you're working on, which is why I don't always send you to the training regimen. We address those issues on a case-by-case basis. So we're thinking that a quick reference guide to very common issues would be useful. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
You may have muted yourself.
Yeah, don't forget to unmute *6.
This is Jessica from Denver Health again. I think that would be useful. I think sometimes we kind of struggle with when to start a new CSR sometimes, or a new event, especially when it's like a CBE, or if the patient comes back after a mammogram with new symptoms. Just a little guideline. I think it would be helpful.
Are there any other topics out there that folks feel would be addressed? in a quick reference guide or an FAQ. I think one that I've noticed is when short-term follow-up is the proper route to go.
Yeah.
Other thoughts or ideas? Help us help you.
You guys are quiet today.
Who got shy?
Hi, this is Teresa over at Edward M. Kennedy with Valley White Health System.
Hi, Teresa.
And I just enter information of one of our patients, and it's kind of, it gave me an error because it was a diagnostic. It wasn't a screening. And I don't know how to fix that error.
Do you know what she's saying? I know what she's saying. Okay, so I think, tell me if this is correct. So you entered probably a screening procedure that maybe had an abnormal result, and it's telling you need more diagnostics to complete the case?
Yes.
Yeah, those are, so those are what I would call like your case management flags. And that doesn't mean that there's a data entry issue in the system. That just means that we need to see more diagnostics, or we need the case closed out if, for like the client, let's say, refused diagnostic follow-up. So you would either close that case out by adding in the diagnostic services when they occur, or you would indicate in the system that the client was lost to follow-up or refused. Does that help answer the question?
Well, what happened? I entered the biopsy, and those two errors went away. But I still have one that says because it was a diagnostic, and I put WWC as a payer, so that's why it's giving me an error, I think.
I wonder if it, so this is one very common question about when to indicate a case is diagnostic referral or not, and I wonder if that might be another source of the problem or something that you can look at, and if not, I think we can work with you one-on-one with it, but we can maybe try to, I think Nick's opening up the system so we can try to see if this is your problem, but
in the training environment.
There is a way to say whether or not the client started with WWC. So there's a mammogram reading, it's a routine, or where it was a diagnostic referral.
Yeah.
So if you indicate that a case is a diagnostic referral, and we're going to show you what that means in a minute, but the intention of that option but from the CDC is the screenings were paid by someone else. They were paid by private insurance, and the lady lost her insurance, or the lady self-paid because she didn't want WWC or didn't know about it. But then once it's time for a colpo or a biopsy, she realizes, or you realize, that she needs to be enrolled in WWC. So the patient referred in for a diagnostic evaluation option is supposed to be there to allow you to get access to WWC dollars for diagnostic services when you didn't really need them for the screening services. However, we have always struggled with this kind of having a slightly different meaning in the community than it does in eCaST or to the CDC. So a lot of times you'll see an error in your system if you select patient referred in for a diagnostic evaluation. If you want to go ahead and do it, we'll cause the error and then add in whatever date you want under man referral. So if you do this, but then the CBE you see below is funded by WWC, I don't think it matters what date.
Okay.
And we'll get upset.
Mammogram, what? What is this?
And then there's a
So this, it will get upset because when you say patient referred in for diagnostic evaluation, you're telling it WWC isn't needed to pay for the screening services, and yet on this one, the CBC, you're intending WWC to pay for the screening service. So we now have all procedures must meet coverage rules. And if you click in, we were kind of doing this backwards. We're not doing normal course of data entry. We'll see that the CBE now has an error. And it'll say something like, client referred in for diagnostic evaluation can't have WWC funding. So this might be something you're also encountering. I don't know, Teresa, if that helps that explanation maybe helps you diagnose your problem.
Yes, it did. It did.
Okay, good. Yeah, this is one of the ones that I think people struggle with a lot. CDC, this is a relatively new option from the CDC, and they were trying to give us a way of saying every woman doesn't have to start with a CBE or mammogram. You can start further in the course of the client's diagnosis, and yet it just means something different in the community. So I don't know if you guys have suggestions for how better to identify or word or track this in eCaST, but because that would be fantastic if we really struggle with this one in particular.
I wonder if you can go back where it says breast, and then you chose that.
Sure. Can you get back to the screenings page?
Yes, please.
Open up medical history, maybe.
I think we need to go back one more. Right here?
Okay. Okay, now I know where to go. Okay. And then you went into the breast.
Yep. If you have an error message over here, click on this box. It'll give you all the errors associated with that screening. And then if you click on the error message, it'll take you into the patient accordion.
Are those errors in any particular order?
Not that I know of.
Okay, thank you.
And one thing that is kind of a feature of eCaST, the accordion pieces, eCaST tries to help you think through the case by opening and closing some of these pieces. So medical history, you see at the top, it says that word, but you didn't see that information until Nick just clicked on it. You're clicking on it to open and close it. This happens throughout the course of your data entry, where once you have diagnostic services, your screening procedures piece closes. That's kind of as a placeholder to say in your book, we bookmarked it. We know you're 3/4 of the way through. We know you're not going to go back to the first chapter and reread it. But sometimes we know you need to access that, and sometimes it feels like it's hidden. And you just click on those top gray bars to reopen it if you needed to. For example, in this case, change the mammogram reason to mammogram not done from referred in for a diagnostic evaluation. But that was a really good question, Teresa, and I'm sure a lot of people benefited from us running through that particular scenario because I know it's a common question.
And Teresa, if you're working through it and you still have other questions or run into another hiccup, just shoot me an email. I'll be more than happy to help.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
What other questions or suggestions do we have?
Hi, this is Susan at Pars Medical. I think this is kind of a pie-in-the-sky suggestion, but I figured I'd throw it out there anyway. Is there any way to link when payments are made on a patient's account into the system?
Ooh, click cancel. Yes. Well, sort of. Tell me if this gets at what you're talking about. Click the down arrow, and maybe she doesn't know about the billing.
Oh, maybe I don't.
This is a fairly new feature, and I don't know if we ever covered it in an eCaST users group. So click on this feature right here that says billing history. This one hasn't been paid yet, but you'll be able to see if a case has been changed in 5 different invoices, it'll list all of them individually in time.
Wait, can you do that one more time? I had to switch my screen from large to smaller. Sorry.
Yes. So can you click off of it? So do you know how to access this particular screen?
Yes.
Okay, so you just click this down arrow instead of clicking on the caution flag.
Oh, okay.
And it switches. It defaults to screening errors when you open a page.
Okay.
Once the case is paid, it defaults to billing history. And you would see billing history information here, just like you would in the old eCaST system if you ever used that. But it's screening specific. So here we would only see information on the breast screening for Jeffrey Scott.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I did not know that. Thank you very much.
It's a fairly new feature.
Okay.
You also have symbols on this tab that can tell you the billing status of the individual one. So say just hypothetically that this came out as a B2, and you would have a symbol next to here. If we had paid it out, it would have a $sign next to it.
Okay.
If you had made an adjustment to the record after that fact and there may be a billing adjustment, you'll have an up and down arrow as the symbol.
Okay.
And then if you have not yet gotten to a place in which the screening has billed, you'll have these two dashes here, which is what it currently shows.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Great question.
See pie in the sky. Check.
Yeah, you guys exceeded expectations.
No, we're glad that we were able to give you something you wanted. What else, guys? Or what are other things that you want us to cover during eCaST users groups in depth? So, for example, one thing that's been asked for in the past, I don't know if we need a refresher on it now or not. Maybe you'll let me know. But it seems like core indicators are always a really interesting topic that you guys want to know more about.
Oh, okay.
So things like that where maybe it takes, 30 minutes or a longer amount of time, and we can prepare additional information for you to go through a topic like that or something about data entry. I don't know if you guys have ideas or thoughts on things you would like to spend this hour doing in the next few months.
Okay. Any more pies in the sky? That's what I want to hear.
Any new folks who want to, it's okay to ask
anything.
Any beginner questions as well, because I need to hear them over and over.
I think I'll take the opportunity to make an absolute shameless plug. For next Wednesday, I'll do a live tech assistance webinar where you can ask any questions under the sun about eCaST. We can be case specific about it and address actual errors that you're working with. That will be next Wednesday, I believe 9:30 in the morning. Same login information as this meeting. It's not a required meeting. It's completely voluntary. But if you find that you've got a stack of errors, I know we're coming up on the billing run that'll do the reallocations in January. So if you've got a stack of errors in your screenings list and you want to go through them, you just want a little guidance, I'll have 2 hours at least set aside next Wednesday morning, this exact same setting, to address those individual issues. So thank you for listening to my shameless plug.
I have a question. So how come sometimes, like, when you have that person who needs a short-term follow-up, on some cycles, it'll let you close it out with a short-term follow-up and, add a month, and then you start a new cycle. But on some clients, you have to do it all on that one cycle.
Do you mean sometimes you add the short-term follow-up on the original cycle and other times you're adding it on a second cycle?
Exactly, yes.
The only reason you would ever add short-term follow-up on the original cycle is if WWC was not considering that case clinically complete or closed. And Angie, let me know if I'm not following. And Oshana, this might be a good scenario. It might be good to run through one of these scenarios specifically with us.
Okay.
But sometimes what happens, and tell me if this sounds like maybe one of the scenarios you're hitting, and this is very common for others as well, is that you'll have a CVE that's abnormal, and you have a diagnostic mammogram following it that, let's say, is BI-RADS 1, or BI-RADS 2, let's say. No, let's go BI-RADS 1. Sorry, I'm arguing myself. And your clinician says that they're going to do a 1-month short-term follow-up CVE. That is something that Angie, as the nurse consultant here, probably would not approve, and we would say that you would need to do that CVE on the original cycle to close it out for clinical concordance. So even though you may be kind of considering or viewing that as short-term follow-up, in CDC's eyes, the time is still ticking between those two, and the CDC doesn't approve us closing that case out because the mammogram wasn't consistent with the abnormal CVE, and so in that sense, it's almost like our algorithms with the CDC are disagreeing with what your clinician said.
Well, I thought all suspicious that ones that you mark for their CVs, all abnormals have to come back in 30 days, whether their mammogram was a 1 or 2 or 6-month follow-up.
No.
No, if their mammogram, if they need diagnostics after their mammogram, they don't have to come back for another CBE.
Often that is a clinical recommendation, I guess.
So if they had a CBE that was a 1 or a 2, if they had a CBE that was suspect, and let's say she said to come back in 30 days. So they did their mammogram, and let's say it was a 2, so when we go in and we enter it that it was a 2, and then we click short-term follow-up, and in a month, certain ones will close it out completely, and then we'll let you go in and enter in that 30-day follow-up under a new cycle, or others will let you not close it out, and you have to put that all in one, their 1-month follow-up CBE all in there. It doesn't make a difference if it's a 1 or a 2. It's like it picks and chooses which ones you can put in the same cycle or which ones that you have to start a new one.
I wonder if there are there dates, Kristen? Like, is it 30 days and then or is there a 2-month period? Like, if the patient is quite past the 30 days.
I wonder if it's this. So are you saying it's read-only, Oshana?
No, I'm just saying, like, let's say, like, so today she comes in and she has a breast exam where she wants her to come back. So let's say on the 22nd, she goes and she gets her mammogram or 2, and then on the, like, let's say we get her rescheduled for her 30 days on the 3rd, certain ones will let you close that out from once her mammogram was done and say now she needs this month follow-up, and then you're done. It greens out all that stuff. And then you go back in on the 3rd and you put in that she came in and everything was okay, versus some of them you still have that error. And it says more diagnostic follow-up is needed. So then once you go back a month later and put in that short-term follow-up, then it closes.
Yeah, my guess is this. So I'm guessing there are probably some subtle differences between these cases. And more than likely it probably has to do with whether the system is seeing that CBE and or mammogram as abnormal. So adding a second CBE will always kind of allow the system to close it out with the final diagnosis. However, sometimes if you have a CBE and a mammogram, if the system thinks it's abnormal but you don't, or you're recommending short-term follow-up, in those situations actually probably requires Angie's review and approval. And it sounds like what has happened functionally at your clinic, because you often do recommend that 1-month short-term follow-up CBE, you're ultimately probably not asking Angie to review it. Instead, you're adding the CBE, which in the end is probably what Angie would recommend. So it's like you're closing the case out a little too early. You should just leave it as further immediate until the person comes back in for that CBE. I feel like it would be probably mostly beneficial for you if maybe you and Angie sat down and ran through a couple of those cases to really dig through whether or not there was a real clinical difference and a rhyme or reason to why eCaST acted differently. Because eCaST behaves based on the results of the CBE and the results of the mammogram, and the absence or presence of a checkbox marked in the top right, you see admin override.
Mm-hmm.
Angie would mark that if she said, okay, well, the CBE was suspicious, but the mammogram was a BI-RAD 2. I'm going to allow it to close out here, and I'm going to clear that error for you. So she has to do that for you whenever you would stop at that place.
But I think this is a big issue. I think people are doing it differently. And so what I'm hearing from Kristen is that we should not be using the short-term follow-up in this situation, that we should keep the cycle open and 30 days later, so it should say further immediate follow-up.
Okay.
And then 30 days later when they come in for their CBE, that goes on the same cycle.
Okay.
But folks are doing it differently, so I think we should move forward with that as the standard, yeah.
And I would say that maybe one reason to do that, or one way to think through it, is that even if your provider is recommending a 30-day wait, more than likely if you asked Angie for approval to go ahead and close it out, the answer would be no, we need to have a CBE.
Right.
And so it really is further immediate follow-up. And Angie, would it be right to say that while the provider said to come back in a month, if the client came back today for that, instead of waiting the month and then they put that CBE in, that's all clinically appropriate and would resolve that case? It's just a lot of times for scheduling reasons they make them wait or they end up waiting.
Yeah.
So it's really more almost like an administrative or a convenience, a function of convenience that there's that 30-day wait, but the CDC is considering it further immediate follow-up still.
So what you're saying is if we have a lady that needs to come back in 30 days, we need to change it to further immediate follow-up instead of short-term?
That or ask Angie to approve closure of it.
It's almost like she still needs further diagnostics. So if you think of it that way, so just leave it open with further immediate follow-up, and then once the CBE is entered, you can close it out.
Okay.
So then she enters the CBE here.
Follow-up CBE. That was a good one, Oceana, because I know other people have had the same question.
Here's our display bug. So you're seeing on the screen a display issue where the diagnostic procedures display twice. We're clearing that bug, or we're trying to fix it, but sorry it took a couple weeks, it feels like, to notice that was happening. It's not storing twice, just so you know.
It's not storing twice, and it's not affecting any payments.
Okay, are there other questions?
Be a good role model and do your final diagnosis.
Will do.
Hi, this is LaDonna from Trinidad.
Hi, LaDonna.
Hey, I have a question. So at our facility, sometimes it takes a while to get things scheduled, and then, we have a really high no-show rate. So from the time a patient comes in and we enter her into eCaST, and then she has her testing done, and we get the results and we let the patient know, and then if they need further diagnostic testing, that time frame sometimes is out of that 90-day period that we have for our billing cycle, and then we have to do, when we do the auditing, then we have to do extra work for that. Would it be better to just close out that case and reopen it, or what would be the best scenario for that so we're not having to do extra work?
So we really don't want you to close out a case as lost to follow-up or refused unless that really is, you've met the criteria for lost to follow-up through the WWC policy. If you've met that, you can close out a case as lost to follow-up, I guess, and reopen it later, but really WWC so that Angie can monitor what's going on statewide, and so that we can really see those cases in the system as they move through. If you're actively still case managing an abnormal, it should remain open in the system. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure it did.
So when does the 90 days CAT start, or if you have a case started, if there's an open case, but if it's an abnormal CBE, when does it become read only?
Oh, so you're saying if you have like a CBE, do you have to wait the 90 days to close it out if the mammogram hasn't come back? The lady hasn't gone in for her mammogram?
Well, I think she's talking about because that.
Hey guys, sorry, I actually hung up on you instead of hitting the mute button. I just disconnected the phone call. So I don't know if I missed any of the conversation, but
So can you what do you say it again?
Okay, so my question is, say we have a patient who's entered into eCaST with today's date. for whatever reason, we have a high no-show rate here in Trinidad for their mammograms. We get our PAPs in the system, and they're done, and we get our numbers, and they're cleared out right away. But our mammograms, we seem to be having issues getting them done in a timely fashion, getting them scheduled, getting the patients to show up on time for their mammograms, then getting the results back to us and getting them entered into eCaST. I had 2 cases last last billing year, fiscal year, where they weren't done in a timely manner because the patient had to have a bunch of diagnostic testing to go up north. So then we had to do all the audit paperwork for, why they were late and what was going on, why it wasn't done in a timely manner. And so I have a patient right now who just has not showed up for her mammogram. She's been a no-show twice, and so I finally just closed her out because I don't want it to exceed the time frame of, when it's acceptable and when, we're going to have to do extra paperwork or whatever. So would it be, what my question is it better to just close out the case and then open a new one if the patients aren't being compliant and showing up for their procedures, or should I just leave it open until they do show up? What's the best scenario for that?
I think your first answer, Kristen, was the right answer. You want to keep it open unless they've met the loss to follow-up policy.
Does the client are these clients with a normal CBE who are just coming in for the recommended mammogram and you're having trouble getting them in for the mammogram?
Yes, usually that's the case.
So here's what eCaST will do, and you can do one of 2 things with this. So eCaST will automatically, 90 days after the CVE, and what you were kind of mentioning, I think, it will automatically close it and pay you the B1. Then you'll have that error in eCaST that says pending screenings not complete to try to help you know your list of clients who should be coming in for services. It's your choice if you want to, or if you feel like a client's not going to come back. You can at any point between day 1 and day 90 go ahead and close that case out as follow routine screening because she's not going to come in for her mammogram. And I think that there are some sites, and we've left this historically up to your kind of what works with your flow best, so long as you have good tracking mechanisms beyond eCaST in place. If you want to go ahead and close out those CVEs when you initially enter them as follow routine screening and then pop back in and reopen that and add the mammogram at a later date, that's fine to do, or that's your choice. It's just eCaST won't help you track those if you're closing them out. Does that help?
That does help. So when it comes time for next year's audit and Datapalooza and all that kind of stuff, will we have to have information to support all of that? Like, why did it take X amount of time to make sure you got all the information into eCaST?
Yes, I think we're going in circles. So there's 2 things going on. So if it's a CBE and it's taken a while to get a mammogram, that will not appear on Datapalooza, or it shouldn't appear on Datapalooza. And if it is, that's probably an issue that we need to resolve. What should appear on Datapalooza are cases where there was an abnormal and it took a really long time to get her from the abnormal through to her diagnostics. And the intention there is not to have you do extra documentation of why it took so long. It's more for you to literally just open up the chart, confirm everything is in there, and that eCaST is accurately reflecting what happened. And then to simply tell us, yes, it's correct, or no, it's not, and I corrected it, or no, it's not, and I need help. So it's not for extra documentation purposes. We do have a comment option there in the Datapalooza sheet, and that's really more for an explanation if you need us to help you with something. And one of the reasons we do Datapalooza is because a lot of times cases get closed as lost to follow-up. And it feels like lost to follow-up at the time, and lo and behold, the client comes in a month later and has diagnostic services, but somehow they never make it into eCaST. And believe it or not, that happens about 30% of the time. And that's why every 6 months we do Datapalooza to make sure that that important information is getting in eCaST and is getting back to the CDC. So about a third of the cases that are closed as lost to follow-up, routinely every 6 months when we have you review those, you go, oops, I forgot to add this information to show you that this client really is meeting this indicator. So it's really to help you guys look good to the CDC and us to look good as a state to the CDC so that we secure our future funding. An extra kind of explanation in that Datapalooza spreadsheet is that's not the intention, is to make you do extra documentation. It's just to make sure, confirm, is everything in eCaST reflective of what's in your chart. Does that help? Did LaDonna hang up again?
I know.
No, I didn't. I almost fell off my chair, but okay. I think I get what you're saying. So as long as it's a normal CDE and it's a screening mammogram, if it takes her 4 months to get in to do her mammo, just leave the case open, that's okay?
Yeah, it'll actually, eCaST will automatically close it out for you in 3 months. If you want to close it out sooner, you can. If you want to wait the 3 months and then reopen it the 4th month, because it'll auto-close the 3rd month, that's fine too. It's really based on what works best for you in that particular data entry scenario.
So occasionally, though, Nick and I will be working on our reports, and we may send you an email that says, is this client lost to follow-up, or are we waiting for something else to happen? And it'll be like 40 days or 50 days. And so you can just respond by email saying, we're holding on, closing out this client's chart for whatever reason. Does that make sense? I'm wondering if that's why you're even asking the question, that you've gotten an email from Nick or I asking you to close it out. Around Datapalooza time.
Right, exactly.
More around Datapalooza time.
Right. No, I think you guys answered my questions. I just wanted to make sure I was doing everything just so it's done in a timely manner and the way that, you know, works better with eCaST, and that way everything's just putting in the right way. If that even makes sense at all.
and there isn't the Datapalooza piece. Everybody has at least a handful of cases that appear there. I mean, there are usually maybe 2 or 3 agencies that somehow don't have one error on their list. It's just a way of us making sure all of our ducks are in a row before we submit the data to the CDC. So I would consider it more a standard part of the process for this program rather than a list of really bad things you're doing. Everybody gets a list that they have to review every 6 months, and it just makes sure we're looking as good as we can to the CDC. But don't feel bad that you have to participate. It sounded like you thought maybe you were getting a lot of red marks, and that's not true. We reviewed, a total of nearly 500 cases over the last Datapalooza, and that's pretty standard, maybe even a low volume. So.
Better and better.
Are there other questions? We have about 5 more minutes. Now, there is one thing I wanted to show you guys and get your feedback on really quickly. So when I show you this, I'm going to preface it with this is in it's not even in the training environment. It's in a test environment that you don't have access to. But it is nowhere near release. So if you like it or you don't like it, it's not going to be in eCaST soon. I just was curious to get you guys' feedback on whether or not this would be a helpful feature or whether or not you had ideas as we were developing it. So we have wanted for a while to give you some sort of care coordination dashboard in eCaST. And we've wanted to split out what are in your screening errors pile into maybe more effective or relevant piles of information so that you're not seeing everything, you're seeing what kind of action needs to occur. And so, let me make sure I'm in the right environment, and I am. So we have kind of a mock-up I'm going to show you today. It's not functional, really, so I'm not even going to play around with it to show you that, but I wanted to kind of get your thoughts or opinions about this. So this is mostly what old eCaST looks like. It just hasn't loaded all the way. And I'm going to switch to kind of a different view of eCaST where we're going to see a new dashboard.
Ooh.
And so what you see here, this is, in theory, could potentially replace what is currently on your homepage, where this, for example, to kind of orient you to the way eCaST currently functions, is your client search. And then here right now you see this is kind of a statewide mock-up. There are a bunch of screening errors. These would turn into solely data entry errors. Your things like screening ineligible would go in here in admin notices, so they would no longer be in your list of screening errors. So I believe if I click this, it works. Okay, so this is the list you're used to seeing.
Okay, yep.
But your admin notices of screening ineligible would move here, so you would no longer see it here. And beyond that, your pending screenings not complete would move out of your data entry errors into another section. And then your cases with further immediate follow-up required would be in a case management section. And then this would be kind of a specialized query. Cancer cases do not currently appear as an error, and they would continue not to, but this would be a place for you to see all your cancer cases and potentially, let's say, update treatment information or check on BCCP enrollment status. So are there kind of initial thoughts about this? I don't even know if I explained it very well, other than I want to reiterate this is not coming out soon. We're really interested in your feedback on it, but I don't want to stress anyone out that you've got to learn something new overnight. And we'll certainly talk about this more and more as we get your feedback. But are there any kind of initial thoughts? Are these the right buckets, maybe?
What's the title of screening errors going to be?
I think it'll be data entry errors.
Yeah. How is pending cycles and patient navigation different?
Pending cycles up here, this happens fairly rarely. We kind of forced it to show right now, but it's literally when you're in the middle of data entry and the power goes out and you're literally halfway through a case.
No.
And you need to pick up where you left off and finish it. So it's like about data entry. It's like if you accidentally closed Google Chrome right now and you were in the middle of doing data entry, it would keep your spot more or less.
Or if you've enrolled someone but have not put in any procedures. No?
Mm-mm.
Okay, not that.
You have to have created a clinical cycle but not have any screenings inside of it yet.
Got it.
Is there any feedback at all? Is this look at all helpful? Or is it too theoretical at this point?
This is Nikki at Peak Vista in Kiowa, and I think it looks great. I think it can help eliminate a lot of errors, or at least to help everybody keep up with where they're at with things.
Or kind of sort through if someone's in charge of one area, someone else is in charge of case management. They can look at the case management only. Kind of nice.
This is Esther from Planned Parenthood. I agree. I think having them separated out into buckets is much more helpful than just a list, because it can be really confusing to try to solve an error if you're kind of unsure if it's a case management thing or a data entry error. So I like it a lot.
Okay, good. So you guys are not, if we continued moving in this direction, there are any big red flags or concerns about this direction? I would hate to do this and you guys are, oh no, we didn't really like that. And we're not doing this overnight. We're continuing to work on it.
There's some responses in the chat box.
Oh, good. So I click this?
Yeah, the bottom one.
Looks great. Yay.
It's awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So you guys like it. Good. That makes me feel better. I just want to make sure the other thing that we're trying very hard with this, I feel like sometimes we've designed this for a bigger monitor than a lot of you guys have. And so we're trying to make this something that fits on a smaller screen.
Very nice.
So we're trying to minimize what is displaying so that you guys are seeing the information you need, but maybe in a easier to digest way. The other things that you're kind of used to seeing, and probably some things that don't exist yet, again, this is kind of in this mock-up land, but we'll have a similar, hopefully, dashboard-like feature for core indicators at some point. But you would, like you go here, I don't even know if this will work. It did. You would go here for reports, So those things would still remain there, and this kind of menu here you could get to from anywhere. So you could be inside of a case and then go to reports instead of having to go to the home page to then find the reports. So little things like that to try to make the system easier for you guys to navigate. You might also notice right now that the system is a little faster. Those two things don't have to go together, but in this kind of newer version, it is a lot faster to load cases.
Cool.
So those are the two things we're working on right now. And if as you're digesting this or thinking through this, if you think of other helpful buckets of information or red flags about this kind of process moving forward, please do let us know, because we're in that part where we're trying to formulate what would be most useful. So think through that and feel free to shoot us an email with that feedback. And I just noticed that we're over time, so I'm going to let you guys go. If I didn't get you earlier, please stay on the line so I can call your agency's name. But thank you so much to everybody for joining today. This was a very great call.